Hey guys, Justin here. So, for years, I've been hearing about Bitcoin and listening to people try to convince me to buy it. And after repeated calls by people in the comment section of my videos telling me to buy Bitcoin, I have seriously started considering it. Now, I am not someone who wants to hassle with setting up a digital wallet and running the risk of forgetting my password, like this guy who lost his password to his $250 million Bitcoin wallet. I instead wanted an easy way to buy Bitcoin without having to jump through all of the hoops of actually buying real Bitcoins. And I have a feeling that I am not the only one who wants to gain exposure to Bitcoin without having to set up a separate Bitcoin account. So I decided to make this video to help you guys out. Now, if you want to buy actual Bitcoins, there are plenty of ways to do it. Coinbase is one good option, but there are plenty of other sites out there as well. Just make sure you don't get scammed by someone in the comment section telling you they can set it up for you. That is, if you wire them all of your money. Please don't do that. But for me, I like having all of my investments in one place where I can easily manage them, and I don't like transferring money back and forth between different accounts. So that's why creating a separate Bitcoin account was unappealing to me. But with that being said, Bitcoin is increasingly becoming a more accepted form of payment around the world. And honestly, the success of Bitcoin has always relied upon its mass adoption as an acceptable form of currency, which is starting to change as more companies are starting to embrace Bitcoin. But for me, the main reason I have resisted buying Bitcoin up to this point is because of the risk and also the volatility. Bitcoin has had massive price swings both up and down over the past couple of years, and I wasn't too keen on buying something that could drop in value and never recover. That is, if Bitcoin ultimately fails to go mainstream. But now it looks like we're at a tipping point that could signal the beginning of a huge increase in the price of Bitcoin as more and more companies start to embrace cryptocurrency. And this in turn has taken a lot of risk out of buying Bitcoin. So in today's video, I want to share the top 9 ways you can buy Bitcoin without actually having to buy Bitcoin itself. But before we get into it, if you are new here, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. I put out new videos every week on the stock market and investing, and I don't want you to miss out. So do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. So when it comes to Bitcoin, there are many advantages that make Bitcoin superior to fiat currency. However, the biggest and most commonly cited advantage of Bitcoin is that the number of Bitcoins are limited, while fiat money or government issued money can be printed on demand, which can lead to high levels of inflation and has a potential to destroy a country's economy if it gets out of hand. Which, if you don't believe me, take a look at this eBay auction where you can buy 1 million worth of Venezuelan currency for only $12.95. It's never been easier to become a millionaire, guys. And also, you get free shipping. But all joking aside, inflation is something that a lot of Americans are worried about right now, with the government here in the US literally printing billions of dollars a month in brand new currency just to prop up our economy. And with the national debt currently sitting at $25 trillion and interest rates at record lows, people are worried that we are headed into a period of high inflation. So with this as a backdrop, it is not surprising that people are trying to find a way to diversify their holdings away from fiat currencies. Now, for me, I have not decided to buy Bitcoin or any Bitcoin related assets, as Bitcoin is still a very volatile asset. And this volatility is very difficult to handle without panicking and selling whenever there is a big pullback. So as I talk about Bitcoin, don't take it as me recommending Bitcoin or telling you to go out and buy Bitcoin, because that is a decision you will need to make for yourself. And I really want to try to remain as neutral as possible whenever I talk about Bitcoin, just because it is such a volatile asset. But personally, I do believe that 2021 will be a big year for Bitcoin, and I also believe that we could see a lot of companies start accepting Bitcoin by the end of the year, which will help Bitcoin gain credibility and could also help its price go up dramatically. So that is my personal prediction. Now, the first way to invest in Bitcoin is to buy shares of PayPal. PayPal will allow customers to buy and hold Bitcoin in their digital wallets and will roll out crypto payments in their popular Venmo app in the first half of 2021. Now, PayPal does not currently hold any Bitcoin on its balance sheet, and it sounds like they don't have any plans to do so in the future. Instead, PayPal will work with a company called Paxos Trust, a regulated provider of cryptocurrency, to enable their cryptocurrency services. So as the price of Bitcoin rises, more and more people will sign up for PayPal's cryptocurrency services, which will ultimately boost PayPal stock price. Or at least that is what PayPal is hoping for. Now, if you want more exposure to Bitcoin, you can also buy shares of Square Stock. Square is another fintech company that allows customers to buy and sell cryptocurrencies, but the main difference between Square and PayPal is that Square actually has Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So by buying shares of Square, you would be gaining indirect exposure to Bitcoin itself. Now, Square currently owns $200 million worth of Bitcoin and has big plans for Bitcoin in the future. However, at a market cap of nearly $100 billion, Square's $200 million in Bitcoin is a very small percentage of their total assets. So if you do end up buying shares of Square stock, it's not the best way to gain exposure to Bitcoin, but it's still worth mentioning. Now, PayPal and Square are both very large companies with their best growth days long behind them. So if you want to invest in a much smaller fintech company that is also focusing on Bitcoin, you should consider buying shares of MOGO Stock. MOGO is a Canadian fintech company that has experienced huge growth in Bitcoin transactions over the past couple of months. In fact, from October to November of last year, Bitcoin trades on their platform increased by 135%. But even with that impressive growth, MOGO is not content with just letting their customers buy and sell Bitcoin. Instead, MOGO also wants to buy and hold Bitcoin for themselves. MOGO recently announced plans to buy roughly $1.5 million worth of Bitcoin in December of last year, which may not sound too impressive compared to Square's $200 million in Bitcoin, but MOGO only has a market cap of around $400 million, which is over 300 times smaller than Square's market cap. So by buying shares of MOGO stock, you would actually gain more exposure to Bitcoin than by buying Square stock. And you also get the added benefit of buying a company that potentially has higher growth rates overall. That is, if you are willing to take on the additional risk. But if you are willing to take on a little more risk, then MOGO stock could be a good option for you. Now, the next stock I want to talk about is a stock we all know and love, and that is Tesla stock. Elon announced on Monday that Tesla had bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, and he also announced plans to allow customers to be able to pay with Bitcoins at some point in the future. Now, this was a pretty big announcement on Monday, and both the bulls and the bears were discussing it in depth. And as you can imagine, the Tesla bears were using it as an opportunity to criticize Tesla, while the Tesla bulls were generally optimistic about the move. Now, in my opinion, I think this was a good move on Tesla's part because Tesla is trying to brand themselves as not only a car company, but also a technology company. And buying Bitcoin and allowing customers to pay with Bitcoin is a great way for Tesla to maintain their image as an innovative technology company. However, even though Tesla bought a very large amount of Bitcoin, they are actually not the largest corporate holder of Bitcoins. If we look at this chart, we can see that another company called MicroStrategy actually has 2 times more Bitcoin than Tesla does. And the good news is that MicroStrategy has a market cap of only $11 billion, which means that by buying MicroStrategy stock, you would be gaining roughly a 30% exposure to Bitcoin for every share you purchase. Compare this to Tesla stock, which has a market cap of $800 billion, and you can see how Tesla isn't the best way to gain exposure to Bitcoin. In fact, buying 1 share of Tesla means that you would only be buying roughly $1.50 worth of Bitcoin, whereas buying 1 share of MicroStrategy stock means you would be buying over $300 worth of Bitcoin, which is a pretty big difference considering that Tesla and MicroStrategy stock trade for similar prices. Now, MicroStrategy unfortunately did get hit pretty hard this past week on Tuesday, but its stock is already rebounding. So that is a good sign. Also, Andrew Left of Citron Research named MicroStrategy as the best way to play Bitcoin stock back in November. And since then, MicroStrategy stock is up over 400%. So investors who took his advice for what it's worth have not been disappointed. Now, another stock that is benefiting from the rise in Bitcoin is a company called Marathon Patent Group. Marathon Patent Group is a cryptocurrency mining company that has $210 million worth of Bitcoin, and they are looking to turn themselves into a cryptocurrency pure play in the future by continuing to add to their Bitcoin stash. Marathon stock is up over 900% in the last 6 months alone, and the stock's price action is fairly similar to Bitcoin's price action, with Marathon stock rising when Bitcoin rises and falling when Bitcoin falls. So just like MicroStrategy stock, Marathon stock is a great way to invest in Bitcoin without actually having to buy Bitcoin. Now, one company that has more Bitcoins than Marathon stock is a company called Galaxy Holdings. Galaxy is an investment company that focuses on digital currencies and has roughly $718 million worth of Bitcoin, which, if we take another look at this chart, shows us that Galaxy stock has the third largest Bitcoin holdings for a publicly traded company. But that's not all. Galaxy also announced in January of this year that they would start mining for Bitcoin on their own, and that they would also start providing financial assistance to other Bitcoin miners. So it looks like the company is really focusing on becoming a leader in the cryptocurrency space. Now, unfortunately, Galaxy Holdings only trades on the OTC markets, and therefore it is not available at every broker. Less robust brokers like Robinhood, for example, don't usually let you trade OTC stocks, which could be a problem for you if you only use Robinhood. However, if you have a broker like Fidelity or Vanguard, they usually will give you access to OTC stocks such as Galaxy Holdings. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, another company that acts as a holding company for Bitcoin is called Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Grayscale is a company similar to Galaxy Holdings, but it does have status as an SEC reporting company, which makes it the first cryptocurrency investment vehicle to have such a distinction, and it gives Grayscale quite a bit of credibility. Also, there is not technically a Bitcoin ETF that currently exists, so Grayscale is the closest thing there is to a Bitcoin ETF currently on the marketplace. Another thing to keep in mind with Grayscale is that you do have to pay a 2% annual fee to invest in the stock, but it is a small price to pay for the convenience of not having to manage a separate Bitcoin wallet. And a lot of Bitcoin services such as Coinbase, for example, will still charge you extra fees anyways. So that makes a 2% flat fee Grayscale is charging seem much more reasonable. Also, Grayscale is a great way for institutional investors and hedge funds to gain exposure to Bitcoin without having to take on the additional risk and cost of owning large amounts of Bitcoin. Hedge funds can quickly buy Grayscale stock when Bitcoin is rising, and they can also quickly sell it when Bitcoin starts falling. In fact, one big investment firm, Guggenheim, recently gained approval from the SEC to invest up to $500 million into Grayscale stock through one of their funds. And Guggenheim also believes that Bitcoin could eventually be worth up to $400,000 based on their own fundamental analysis of the cryptocurrency markets, which would represent a roughly 1,000% gain from today's prices. Also, Cathie Woods from the infamous ARK investment firm also has been buying Grayscale stock. As of October 31st of last year, ARK held roughly 5 million shares of GBTC stock, and they actually added to their position since then. ARK recently bought an additional 2 million shares of GBTC stock to bring their total number of shares up to 7.3 million. Which at a current price of roughly $48 a share means that ARK now has over $350 million worth of GBTC stock. So it's pretty clear from these two examples that GBTC stock is the main way that big money is gaining exposure to Bitcoin right now. Now, before we move on, I do have to mention the biggest problem with Grayscale stock, and that is valuation. Right now, Grayscale owns 572,644 Bitcoins, which is approximately 3% of all the Bitcoins that have been mined so far. Now, if we take the market cap of Grayscale stock and divide it by the number of Bitcoins they currently hold, then that will show us just how overvalued Grayscale stock actually is. So let's go ahead and do the calculation to find out. Grayscale stock's market cap is $33.46 billion, which if we divide that by 572,644 Bitcoins, we get a price per Bitcoin of $58,430. However, the current price of Bitcoin is only $46,900. So this means that at current prices, Grayscale stock is about 20% overvalued. And while this might sound pretty bad, keep in mind that Bitcoin is at all-time highs right now. And GBTC stock is really the closest thing to a Bitcoin ETF that investors have out there right now. So I think this premium is always going to exist, and it shouldn't scare you away from investing in grayscale stock. Also, I've read that grayscale stock has traded at times for premiums well above 30%, which, if that is true, would make a 20% premium seem like a steal. But with that being said, if price is the most important factor to you, then you will be much better off opening up a separate account and buying real Bitcoins. Now, the final stock I want to talk about is one that probably not a lot of people have heard about, and that is Silvergate Capital. Silvergate was founded in 1988 as an industrial loan company and has since transformed itself into a leading banking solution for some of the world's largest Bitcoin investors around the world. Silvergate began their cryptocurrency initiative back in 2013 and was one of the first banks to work with cryptocurrency companies at a time when traditional banks weren't really interested. Because of this, Silvergate now has over 750 cryptocurrency and fintech clients, and through these clients has roughly $5 billion worth of Bitcoin deposited at their bank, which is more than Tesla and MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings combined. Now, one of the reasons I really like Silvergate stock is because of its long history of profitability. Silvergate has been profitable as a company for the last 20 plus years. Also, Silvergate currently only has a market cap of $3 billion and has a PE ratio of only 119, which I know to value investors still sounds way too overvalued. But Silvergate is a growth stock, so it's not that terrible. However, at the end of the day, Silvergate is a company that has a solid track record of profitability, and on top of that, not a lot of people know about the stock. So while companies like MicroStrategy and Tesla stock grab all of the headlines, Silvergate is one that short-term day traders aren't as familiar with, which should help the volatility of Silvergate remain relatively low. So those are the 9 different stocks to buy to gain indirect exposure to Bitcoin. If you found the video helpful, make sure to hit the like button so other people can find this video as well. And check out my channel where I have a bunch of other great videos that you might find interesting. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.